As a spectator at the ever-impressive Vintage Motorcycle Club's Banbury run, reserved for pre-1931 machines, I had long wanted to join in. The Panther was my ticket, but it scores in any number of ways, from its lively overhead valve engine to its lightness and consequent ease of handling. More importantly still, it does so with utter reliability, which is why I have no qualms about slinging a leg over the saddle and settling in for a day's ride of 170 miles to join fellow VMCC members in Norfolk. Let's talk about the notion of reliability and a motorcycle owner's part in it. Can I claim never to stray from the straight and narrow of an ideal service and maintenance schedule? Better to own up to occasional lapses, that lazy moment when I'm only riding a few miles to the shops and so need not bother to check oil dipstick or tyre pressures. They were fine last time I rode, just a week or two ago. Most here present will know what happens to an underinflated tube when the tyre fails to keep pace with the wheel driving it. It's a ride of around 50 miles from home to the start of this run in Swaffham marketplace. I paused in the town to fill the 2.5-gallon tank, and a rider on a Velocette at the next pump spun it up with its aftermarket Alton electric starter. I was pleased when the Panther required only a single kick to carry me that last half mile. I've since signed on, fitted my route sheet in the handlebar roller, and wandered about chatting as riders set off. I enjoy the challenge of route finding and often choose to ride alone. If others tuck in behind and make use of me as navigator, that's fine. But what's going on here? Author Graham Greene said success is only delayed failure, but I take a more optimistic view. Failure is only delayed success. In 2 shakes of a plug spanner, we'll be picking up the first clues to a route which will take us over 40 miles across rural Norfolk to lunch on the coast. A word with Paul, who has kindly stood by in case I'm more nonplussed than usual, and we'll break out the mobile workshop.
Can I give you a hand at all?
No, I'll get it. I've just ridden over from Peterborough. It's fine.
Well, it is flooded. I can notice it dropping out. I was having trouble with this. I've just recently had to start turning the petrol off every time I park it because I was worried about it doing the same.
Okay.
I can see it dripping off the car. I know they tend to anyway, the early ones.
Yeah.
I think it just needs to dry out a bit, doesn't it? For a look at it.
Yeah, I will plug out and have a look.
Go, I'm
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit annoying, isn't it?
Yes.
This is going to take a while, so let's dip into some local history. Swaffham, our springboard for this run, is the subject of a folk tale dating back to 1699, versions of which are also recorded in Europe and in the Middle East as far back as the 13th century. In the local tale, a pedlar, one John Chapman, had a dream that if he went to London Bridge, a walk of over 100 miles, he would learn joyful news. Once there, he stood patiently for 2 or 3 days, until a local shopkeeper accosted him, asking him his business, when he neither sold wares nor begged. The pedlar said he was there in response to a dream he'd had, and the shopkeeper laughed. He said he had himself had a dream that he should go to Swaffham in Norfolk and look beneath a great oak behind a pedlar's house, where he'd find treasure. But do you think I would be such a fool as to make a long journey at the suggestion of a silly dream? Asked the shopkeeper. I'm wiser than that, so learn wit from me and go home to your business. With a spring in his step, the pedlar walked home and dug to find treasures which made him exceedingly rich. The tale is commemorated in a medieval carving in the church, the pedlar with a pack on his back. In the 21st century, we might wonder what he was peddling, going to London a pauper and becoming a rich man soon after his return, but those were more innocent times. Technical progress at Felon and Moore was rapid through the 1920s, and the factory's 4th place in the 1925 Isle of Man TT races was only surpassed that year by big names AJS, HRD and Norton in the first 3 places. Celebrating that peak of achievement, the next year's range of Panthers included a TT replica. For the rider whose purse or riding skills were not equal to a top-of-the-range model, there were alternatives. Mine emerged from the factory as a Model 85 Red Wing, with a 598cc tuned engine. Some 20 years later, the Panther, well past its prime, that original engine was replaced by one of the maker's 500cc units. But it is scarcely the lesser machine for that. With the plug towelled down and buffed up, our extended starting procedure is complete. And what a perfect day for a ride. Warm, dry, cloudless, and with the lightest breeze. I give a nod to the run's sweeper crew as we pass, hoping not to need their services. Navigation is an acquired art. Tulip or ball and arrow route sheets were first used in the 1950s and are the preferred style for most classic and vintage club runs. They give a direction number and sometimes a distance since last instruction, though the run's rolling mileage is all that is provided today. It's the perfect way to brush up your mental arithmetic when no trip meter is fitted. The Panther's Cowie speedometer is mounted in the petrol tank, common in the 1930s, but awkward to use. The odometer in my head only lets me down if I pay too much attention to the scenery. Norfolk certainly has its share of that. Beyond the town I'm alert for an oblique right branch a little less than 2 miles out. The route roller displays one line of 4 directions. At the end, I roll to the next. Hazards on these narrow lanes are oncoming traffic, mostly courteous, and sand traps, where a double wheel track dwindles to nothing, most often encountered on corners. Route finding is not the only reason to stay alert. In the village of West Acre, I'm looking for another crossroads. The dotted line ahead indicating an unmade road or track. Many Norfolk lanes sport only a finger post to a destination by road. Our next turn has the benefit of a signboard and nearby buildings to identify it. The Panther's flexible engine and its efficient Enfield rear cush hub encourage lazy use of the gears in its 3-speed Sturmey Archer box, holding on to third as low as 30 mph. One might expect hand change on a motorcycle to be awkward, but in practice it's no more so than a car. The gate provides a positive stop for up and down changes and a notch for neutral, while a detent plunger in the gearbox secures the chosen gear. Here in the woods, temperatures can drop several degrees on a hot day, but in early September there's little change. I have a rule of thumb to calculate approximate position. The narrower the track, the closer we are to the middle of nowhere. When the Panther is running so sweetly, the day so perfect, there is a danger I'll become a passenger, gazing around at the landscape and forgetting my responsibilities. A crossroads ahead alerts me to the need for a redirect, but my mental bookmarker has fallen out, and I make a snap decision based on a glance at the wrong instruction. The track we've taken is so close to the back of beyond that there's not even room for a U-turn. Now all at sea, I compound the error by making the left turn I should have made in the first place, but now approaching from the wrong direction. Wake up! After a moment I regain my senses, and we revisit the junction for the third time. Have we got it now? Three-quarters of a mile seems a long way when you're looking for confirmation at the following junction. A right and immediate left to Swaffham, and we are back on course. Too many wrong turns can entirely lose your grip on a route, like a knitter dropping stitches in a complex pattern. The next instruction is that navigator's friend, a T-junction. You can't miss it, and there are only two choices, a mere coin toss. Sightseers should sign up for coach trips. These villages, old as time, have no curbs, no footpaths, just houses snugged up to the roadway. Only the horseless carriages give the year away. After an hour or two on the road, we are one, my actions and the Panther's reactions to them almost inseparable at our 5 points of contact: saddle, footrests and handlebars. The straight pull throttle, its cable running along the handlebar, holds position at the lightest grip of my leather glove, closing only slowly when I remove a hand to to change gear or to signal, as I was taught before the days of flashing indicators. A word or two on maintenance, and then we can settle in a while and enjoy the twists and turns ahead. Running a Fiat piston, it has never been oil thirsty, and I seldom have to top up between changes. A slurry of oil and grease emerges slowly from the gearbox over many miles. Sealed ball races in the hubs look after themselves, though occasional adjustment of the head races is required. I grease the rebushed Brampton forks before each outing, using the time-honoured method of a scrap of cotton rag to seal Ticalamit gun to nipple. Rocker shafts are served by a felt block, originally fed by a flip-top oiler, now a grease nipple. Heat from the engine melting it slowly to do its work. If this Panther has an Achilles heel, it's the valve guides, which are entirely without lubrication. I carry a can of chain spray grease in one tool case and give the exposed valves a squirt every 100 miles or when I remember, whichever is the sooner. Some junctions catch me unawares, like this one, round a sweeping bend, which results in a manoeuvre not found in the highway code. I don't think anyone noticed. Ahead of us is the village of Ciderstone, whose hall was the 16th century home of Sir John Robsart, Sheriff of Norfolk. His daughter, Amy, married Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, and her sudden death following a fall downstairs in 1560 led to speculation that she had been murdered so that Robert was free to marry Queen Elizabeth I. How the servants will gossip. In the village a few years ago, riding the Panther outfit, we pulled up to offer assistance to fellow rider Bill. No need for an anecdote this time, because I have the moment on film.
Can we help? Oh, right. Oh, I see. So you need a chain tool. I think I might have one here.
Am I sitting on it, or is it?
No, it's in here. If it's here.
Because it's just completely snapped the link right enough.
Right.
Along there, and
Okay.
I thought it was a primary chain.
Yeah.
And
I
I've
shall
just
get out and
walked down
stand back
there.
for a minute.
Yeah.
Well, this has got to be.
Too much right wrist.
I thought, oh, the breakdown will be along in a minute.
Right.
Probably Danny will have it.
Well, we'll have a look. It's worth. I have had one, and it's one of those things you think, have I taken it out now?
Yeah, it's not a sort of thing you normally carry with you.
No.
Because there's only so much stuff you can have.
That's right. You take a bit more in an outfit, don't you?
Yeah.
I put quite a bit of stuff in for we've been rallying up in Yorkshire, and I put some extra stuff in. Look at that.
Oh, look at that. So all we've got to do is be able to get it on the engine, a gearbox sprocket.
Oh, right.
I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's worth a try.
All's well that ends well. We saw Bill back on the road, greasy-handed and still smiling. Resuming our ride coastwards, a left turn in the village puts us on course for South Creek. On this broader road, the Panther can practice its long loping gait in top gear. Such a relaxing ride. But route setter Brian doesn't keep us on trunk roads for long. Back on a single track, I pull in for an approaching car, and soon afterwards notice that my route holder has flipped onto its back. Our next turn heads us for Walsingham, a place of pilgrimage since the first shrine to a virgin was established there in 1061. Concerned that my camera battery power is running low, I pull up to change it, and so miss the moment when the sweeper crew catch me up. They check that all is well and ride on. A prod on the kickstart, and I spot their bikes in a pub yard on the right, just a couple of 100 yards further on. I feel just a tiny bit guilty that I've held them up. The long flint-panelled wall on our left marks the southern boundary of Hokum Hall Estate, home of the current Earl of Leicester. Flint, plentiful in the county, only became viable as a building material after the Romans introduced English builders to mortar. A left turn and we follow the wall northwards. On the outskirts of Wells next the sea, we pick up the coast road eastwards and encounter more traffic than we have seen on the whole trip. This is the once insignificant village of Stiffkey. I was tempted to say nothing of its erstwhile vicar, thinking that you probably know the story, and if you don't, you won't believe me. Harold Davidson, priest here from 1906, preferred to spend his time in London, where he dedicated himself to saving fallen women from the fires of hell. Defrocked when he was photographed in flagrante with a half-naked prostitute, I'm not telling you which half, but there's a picture on the internet if you really must, the ex-reverend took up a new career in show business. And then in Skegness, while re-enacting the tale of Daniel in the lion's den, he met his end in the jaws of a beast apparently unfamiliar with the biblical tale. I can smell the sea now, and a trifle sore from pounding these by-roads for the past hour or two, I'm ready for a bite of lunch. Brian has organised us privileged parking on Blakeney Quay side, where boat trips to see the seals are available. There's also the lure of local hostelries. And as you have ridden this far with me, I reckon we both deserve a pint before we tackle the return route to Swaffham and the run homeward. So in the absence of any film from the day, here's one we drank earlier. Cheers.
Cheers.